Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
It's just so cool. It's so fucking hype.
Predator just always hits. It's so good. Alright, let's get started on that note. Hello, boys and ghouls. It's your old pal Sick Part 2 here with my good friend Steve Axie and that Matt Killer for another episode of Ghouly Gentlemen.
Yes, thank you for having me on the program.
Are you going to commit to that voice the entire episode?
Well, I'm thinking about it. I'm Matt. I'm the alien xenomorph. Thank you for having me. Now let me find some androids to absorb.
You know what it sounds like more than anything is, what was his name from the Brack show?
Oh yeah, it does.
Hey, welcome to the show.
It does.
So anyway, we're continuing our very odd theme on Horror Month by, like, accidental theme, which is always the best kind, where we're looking at horror movies that have a mother-daughter connotation to them. As I think the general, mother-daughter, all of them have been mother-daughter. It's the general theme, so as long as Steve doesn't pick, like, Psycho, I think we're good.
I mean, close enough.
Yeah.
Close enough.
Yeah, Steve's like, God damn it, Ian, that's what I was gonna pick. So today we're talking about Aliens, the 1986 James Cameron film that is a sequel to the Ripley Scott Alien film. And yeah, it's an interesting time. They waited damn near a decade to make this because they decided they wanted James Cameron from get-go, and it's probably, if not for Terminator 2, it's probably one of his most popular movies, but then, you know, he's done so many things that's really hard to nail down. And it's interesting. I ended up watching the 1990 director's cut or special edition cut. I'm not really sure what was added, or added back in, I guess, might be the better term. I just noticed it and was like, well, if it's the longer cut, it's the one that we should probably watch anyway, so there we go.
Dude, you messaged me and you're like, hey, for what it's worth, I watched the special edition or the extended cut, and I just kind of looked at that message and I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to do that because I don't have access to it. I'm just gonna watch the one that's on Hulu, and you can deal with it. But so I watched it, and then today at work, it was a slow day at the office, so I was like, well, what are the differences? And they were like, well, it's mainly they added in some like scenes that were cut, and I even saw a thing that was like Sigourney Weaver was like upset about some of the stuff that was cut, and I was like, all right, well, you've piqued my curiosity. So I went to YouTube and I was like, all right, Aliens deleted scenes. I found like a 13-minute video that stitched together all the deleted scenes. And then I watched that and I was like, okay, well, now I'm mad. Like, now, like, some of this shit absolutely should have been in the film, because there are scenes, and because I had watched the non-extended cut just the day before, and then watching those scenes, I'm like, there's stuff in here that literally the addition of one or two of these scenes makes this a significantly better film. And their absence makes it a not significantly, but their absence makes it a worse film. And so I was pissed. I was big mad.
Okay, because that's interesting, because it's cut together so well. Like, nothing feels like, you know, like the the Donner cut Superman where there isn't like audition footage or anything. It's cut together so well. It was obviously all filmed at one time and scripted and intended to be one thing. So I gotta ask, what's cut from the theatrical release?
So the two big ones that stood out to me, the first thing that is cut from the theatrical release is any mention of her daughter Amanda. That is gone. And that pissed me off because when I watched the deleted scene where they're like, yeah, your daughter, she died, I'm like, oh shit, because then that like brings that like that kind of lends to why she's so gung-ho about saving Newt. That kind of really lends a lot of weight to that. The other one that was cut that pissed me off personally is there's a scene where she and Hicks look at each other and they call each other by their first names for the first and only time in the entire movie. And I'm like, oh, that's so good, because we're playing with all these like machismo ideas of like you can't be vulnerable, so you're with all these military people and no one ever calls each other by their first names because it's this, you know, not wanting to be vulnerable thing. And then suddenly we have this one perfect little moment where she's like, yeah, I'm Ellen, and Hicks says whatever the fuck his first name is, I've already forgotten it. And I'm like, oh, that makes that like click into place, and that's so good. Like I'm so like actually angry that that's not in the just like normal theatrical version. And then the only other stuff that's in the like cut scenes is stuff that shows Hadley's hope and like Newt's family like finding the xenomorph and like before the shit goes down. And that I was like, okay, that's cuttable. I don't care about that. But the stuff with Amanda and the stuff with that little scene with Hicks pissed me off that was not in the movie that I watched.
See, I like that they cut the stuff with Amanda. I agree with you about the scene with Hicks. I thought that was really good, but I, like you, watched the version that's on Hulu, and I'd seen like both versions interchangeably for years, so they kind of just bleed together in my brain. I can't really tell one apart from the other. But the stuff with Amanda, I like that they get rid of that because it allows that relationship between Ripley and Newt to be entirely just based on their chemistry and attachment to each other as people that survived a xenomorph. And the mother-daughter aspect of it starts to develop more as it goes on, but Ripley in that way, Ripley doesn't really need a reason to care about her as much as she is the only person on this ship or tank or whatever they're on that understands what she went through, and that layer of it is really interesting. There's that moment where after like Bill Paxton is freaking out and screaming and he's like, we can't survive 17 hours on here or whatever, and then Ripley's just like, well, the kid survived here for much longer than that, and then she just puts the helmet on and salutes him like just dismissively.
Oh, so good.
That's so good, and I feel like that really resonates with those larger ideas of like what Cameron's doing here about taking the hyper-masculine soldiers and then situationally emasculating them, and that Ripley and Newt have a bond together because they see not only firsthand what the Xenomorphs did, but they're the only two in the whole movie that are talking to each other about what they're thinking and what they're feeling throughout.
I mean, yes, but I disagree a little bit just in the sense that when you have this idea that you take Ripley and you take away the only family, the only like flesh and blood family you have, you give her this dressing down where they strip her of her identity, they strip her of this role that she had, they strip her of her like her ability to do this job. What you then gain is, yes, you have that with her and Newt being the only ones who have gone through this, but you also have this idea of both of them having also gone through the loss of their families. So I think you're right, but you still lose on this idea of this sort of found family between two people who have lost everything. And I like that idea, and I think that keeping the Amanda stuff in there does kind of play towards that a little bit. So I get what you're saying, but I personally, I think I liked it a little bit better with the Amanda stuff in there.
Also, if I'm not mistaken, if memory serves, I believe one of the reasons that Sigourney Weaver was so mad about that stuff getting cut is because the picture they show of Amanda, I believe, is her mother.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, they cast her mother to be the stand-in for Ripley's daughter, and I thought that was like such a cool idea to kind of take the narrative of the film and have it transcend the film a little bit into the real world. Personally, I do really like the Amanda stuff. I don't know if I've watched Aliens without that stuff in it before or not, because of just kind of the version I bought was the quadrilogy collection, and it's just kind of always been there. So I just, it's only a couple minutes longer, so I just naturally gravitated toward that. It's not like fucking Lord of the Rings special editions or anything. Yeah. So I don't know. I've personally always gravitated toward the idea of Amanda. I think if nothing else, it might like just spell it all out more clearly, and I'm usually okay with that. I rarely get on the case of a movie for spelling itself out too hard, as long as it's still doing it well. So I just thought that stuff worked, and I really liked it. The stuff with Hicks is also really cool. With the name scene, it's funny. It's a little bit of a narrative dissonance, because it's like 14 minutes till detonation. Evacuate to safe distance. My name's Ellen. 13 minutes till destination. My name's... it's like, yeah, maybe you could have chosen a different time to do this.
I do think I'm actually... I genuinely think I'm actually more upset about that scene being gone than I am about the Amanda stuff. Like, if I was gonna put him on tier lists, I like the Amanda stuff, but that scene with Hicks, like, it's interesting because Hicks and Ripley have this really cool relationship that builds naturally throughout the movie. I love the scene where Ripley's like, "Don't leave until we come back" or whatever, and Hicks is like, "We're not going anywhere," and it's such a cool like natural relationship, and like to have that little moment, it feels so like intimate, and so like the movie needs it, like just desperately needs it. But I will say I also defend the Amanda stuff, because you play as her in Alien Isolation, and that game rocks. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. Anyways,
that's cool.
Yeah, the Hicks stuff is really good. I really love the scene where he gives her the watch that like tracks them, and they make a joke about getting engaged, and then she hands that off to Newt, and they use that later to track her down. Everything about Hicks is really cool. He feels like James Cameron basically combining John Connor and Kyle Reese into one character, where you've got the military officer who is waging his last stand against an unkillable threat, and at the same time he's trying to facilitate making sure that this other woman and her kid is able to survive. So both of those kind of guys just form right in there, and it's cool that he does that right in between making Terminator and Terminator 2.
Yeah. I really like, I think on this watch, my favorite character is going to stand out in a weird way. But it's, I think the character's name's Miller, the initial lieutenant in charge of everything that gets, like, knocked out halfway through the movie.
Oh, yeah, he's great.
Yeah, he's really good.
I think that's just, like, the way that he's clearly not prepared for this, and he's just, like, this, fresh out of the academy kind of, military commander, and just how like he basically like pisses his pants when shit gets real, and cannot give an order, and then can only like bark at people for not obeying his non-orders and stuff. That whole sequence with him was just so good to me, and it like stood out to me in particular this time watching this through.
Well, I love this idea that like all the machismo and like stoic manliness in the world means nothing when like boots hit the ground.
Yeah.
It's super interesting the way that all plays out, and it's Hicks who displays more of that like compassion and displays more of that human side of himself that ends up lasting the longest. I love the way it deconstructs that, because as someone who is definitely still more of a Alien 1 supremacist, I do really like a lot of what Aliens brings to the table, and I was struck by, on this viewing in particular, how enthralled I was by just kind of the world of Aliens, because I think the Colonial Marines add so much to just the aesthetic and color of the world of Aliens that make it so like engrossing to have a story in this world.
Yeah, the Space Marines and everything about the way Cameron is taking on the masculine archetypes of the soldiers in a lot of ways it basically just sort of becomes his 80s Vietnam movie in the same way that Star Wars became George Lucas's Vietnam movie, because both of them are big sci-fi allegories for this profoundly 80s, 70s, and 80s American idea that losing in Vietnam was itself a moment of like masculine crisis in the country, and every war movie made since then has been about that idea. Like even when you go back and watch something like First Blood, the whole idea is that Rambo's not treated as a person anymore, and the best scene in the movie is when he's basically having this breakdown and crying about the fact that he used to be somebody and now he isn't, and he used to have his friend's guts spilled all over him, and he's not treated like a person and all that stuff. But then at the same time, there is that other layer to it of like, but you guys are also going into a situation that you don't understand, that you're not prepared for, and you get your asses kicked for doing that in the first place. That stuff about it is really compelling, and it's something that Cameron continues to do through most of his movies going forward from here. Like even the Avatar movies are in some way kind of about that notion of like the military colonial force going in, getting their asses kicked because they don't entirely understand what they're dealing with, and that the best way to deal with it is to shed all these layers and expectations of what a manly soldier is supposed to be. And Ripley being the person that like throws the wrench into that is so good, and it's the thing that became maybe the most influential about the movie going forward, because now every time you see like a female action hero, they're always modeled on like Sarah Connor from T2 or Ripley from Aliens, but no one ever understands what made those characters good, because all they do is like, if you think about like Laurie in the modern Halloween movies, she's basically just every masculine archetype except she's a woman. Whereas when you watch something like Aliens or Terminator 2, those two characters have to embody a kind of masculine role, but there's a dissonance between that and what their expected roles as mothers are supposed to be, and that tension between like one extreme of masculinity on one end and one extreme of femininity on the other end is where they're allowed to kind of figure out who they actually want to be. Whereas with a lot of modern female action heroes, they just kind of go full tilt in one direction, and we don't stop to question like what kind of dissonance has to exist there.
Yeah, that's something that because Carly, Alien is like her favorite movie. Like she fucking loves Alien. And something that she always talked to me about when we were in college and stuff like that is kind of exactly that idea. This idea that the strong female character is the one who embodies what makes a male character strong. And she grew frustrated with this idea that, like, we can't have romance, we can't have moments of, femininity or moments of vulnerability if we want our character to be perceived as a strong female character. Which is part of the reason, another part of the reason why I need that Hicks and Ripley scene in here, because it adds to this idea that you can be this strong, powerful character while still allowing yourself to have moments or even, whole, sequences of what we would consider to be like more feminine, more emotional, because it's not truly expressing a strong female character if the only thing that makes them strong is that they're running away from everything that we associate with femininity.
Yep.
And I think that Ripley really embodies that very well, and it's one of the reasons why when dude bros point to Ripley as like, oh, we have great female, we used to have great female characters, and now we have terrible ones. And they're doing it in a very bad faith way, but in some instances, they're not entirely wrong. It just depends on kind of, there's a reason why we didn't get to see as much of. I feel like there's a reason we didn't get to see as much of Rey showing like her genuine emotion in the last sequel trilogy film. I feel like there's a reason we tend to focus on these like super badass women, and again, kind of run from that idea of vulnerability and exploring, what an actual feminine perspective looks like. So, and I really appreciate that in this movie.
Yeah. on the idea of like not portraying like the full range of female characters, I think there's like a bit of a spectrum to it with any kind of representation, but using like female characters as the example. The movie that immediately came to mind, as you guys were talking about that, was Salt with Angelina Jolie. And the reason for that is because that script was initially written for Tom Cruise, and he ended up passing on it because he thought it was too close to his Mission Impossible character. So they reworked the script a tiny bit and came to Angelina Jolie, but it's still like the exact same character, the exact same movie. And you know, it's like kind of a nothing movie. We've never seen it again, but it's just interesting. So you have like this, where you have a female role that a role that anyone can play, and a female actress can just step into. But it is more interesting when you want to represent characters in a wider range. It is more interesting to do stuff where only like a female can play this character. Now, the one problem with that, and I think that it's not a problem with any one of those things. It's the collective fact that we can't seem to get away from it. Most of the time, what that means is the female character is in some way deeply connected to motherhood. So we see this with Ripley, we see this with Kill Bill, where it's revealed that the reason that she's doing this is because she was pregnant when Bill attacked her and everything. We get, you know, the daughter reveal in the second movie and stuff. Or no, it's at the end of the first, isn't it? Yeah, whatever. So there's just a lot going on there. There's a number of other movies with female lead, and like they are a strong female lead, but their story is deeply still connected to motherhood, and it's like it's good in some senses, especially if it's a good movie and what they're having to say matters, but it also becomes a bit of a problem when that seems to be the only way that we can get good, you know, dynamic female lead representation. It's a bit similar, not identical, but it's like a similar thing to how sometimes it seems that the only time a black actor can get like a serious dramatic role is either playing a slave or playing someone in a civil rights era story.
That's like a crush, almost.
Yeah.
No, you're
It's like-
100% right with that. It's one of those like wider problems where it feels like the amount of stories you can tell with a female character in general is really narrow. I think Aliens gets a bit of a pass on it because, number one, of how well it's done, and number two, and this is also why I don't need the Amanda stuff. I don't dislike the Amanda stuff, but why I don't need it, because it removes the part about her losing her literal child to then create a little bit more narrative ambiguity about her relationship to Newt, and giving them something that goes beyond just being a mother-daughter story. But at the same time, when you're making a sequel to Alien, and I'm with Matt, Alien is still the movie I like better than Aliens, but both of them are still very good. But with Alien, that is a really specific movie about essentially a giant phallic monster attacking and raping people. The whole movie is one big allegory for sci-fi rape, and so if you're gonna make a sequel to Alien and preserve the idea of like what the xenomorph is, then the things like the Queen, the idea that the men become emasculated when they come up against the apex predator of the xenomorph, the idea that Ripley is dealing with a responsibility that comes as a consequence of a violent attack. In that sense, that motherhood angle has to be there more so for her. But you're totally right that, like, in the grand cultural scheme, that is kind of a crutch that we use too often because our definition of what a female story is so narrow.
Yeah, I would be curious to see like a list of female protagonists before Ripley. I think, you know, I'm sure they exist and they're like super plentiful, but like major blockbuster movie, we might have to like kind of blame Aliens for doing this. Aliens is like the first one that comes to mind that kind of begins to like establish this crutch, which again, it's not a problem within the context of the movie. Within the context of the movie, the context of the universe, the context of the story, I think it works great. It is just, I have noticed that of like, that's kind of people's go-to is, well, if we got a female character, we make her a mom, and it means that everything she does will make perfect sense. And I think it's worthwhile to point out in this episode in particular, but if we're doing this whole month long of horror movies that accidentally feature mother-daughter dynamics, isn't it interesting that they seem to all revolve around like a very similar plot beat? We talked about Monster week 1, and that was like the shittiest mom in the world trying to just do one goddamn thing right, and that was keep her kid alive. We talked about Silent Hill last week, and that was mother trying to save her daughter, at first from like mental health, and then from the literal pits of hell or whatever the fuck was going on in Silent Hill. And now here we have Ripley trying to redeem the child she lost, and redeem her status as a mother, and come back and save Newt from the ultimate hell that is the xenomorphs. I think the scene that really, really sells it, that like is just Sigourney Weaver's best acted scene in this, is because it works so well on two levels. The first one just being the practical, no, she is still alive because they don't kill you, they take you. Yeah. But the way she's saying it, no, they don't kill you, they don't kill you, is just like, the context of that is so horrifying, especially given with Newt being so little and stuff.
Especially because like we see both in Ripley's nightmare sequence in the beginning of the film, and when they find one of the colony survivors that have been impregnated, and in both situations, Ripley in the nightmare and the colony survivor, the first words out of their mouths are like, "Kill me." So it's like, oh yeah. Mm-hmm. So you kind of got that like set up, and then that payoff with that sequence. I wasn't even thinking about that, but that's a good point. And that scene's devastating too. You can just feel the pain radiating off of her.
Oh man, just like the tension, the little like fingers coming up from the grate of the metal because she's in the sewer below. I was like, oh my god, it's so terrifying. That you just got the tension. It's like probably one of the most famous shots from the movie of the xenomorph coming out of the water behind her, but just my god.
Just gorgeous looking movie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I will say this too: the xenomorphs look a lot better in Aliens than they did in Alien. Alien had like the classic problem of, at a certain point, they just had to have the actor playing the xenomorph, which was just a tall black dude, just run around set with like only the head on, and just filmed it really, really dark because they couldn't get the suit and the animatronics and yada yada to all look good constantly, so they had to just like, all right, just run across the frame really, really fast. It's like, I don't even have the whole suit on. Yeah, it won't matter. To this, where not only do you see the creatures a lot better, they're in like full lighting. God, the moment where they're in the nest and like the one from the wall just moves.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck! That thing was terrifying.
They do a lot more with the xenomorphs in camera, but I'd hesitate to say that they are better than the ones in the first one, because
I actually like how little we get to see of
the
first one.
Yeah, the first one is just so much more of a traditional horror movie, where the limitations of how little you see them are, yes, part of the production, but also part of the kind of movie it ends up being anyway. With the second one, we're making so much more of like an action thriller. The budget's a lot higher. You're seeing so many more of them as opposed to just one, where you kind of by necessity have to come up with better, more practical ways to get more of them on the screen. And they look good. I mean, James Cameron knows how to shoot these things, and they look incredible. But one thing that I do prefer to Alien over Aliens is there's always going to be, in situations like this, that sort of inverse ninja law of, in Alien, there is one xenomorph, and it's the scariest, fucking, most ungodly thing you've ever imagined. And then in Aliens, there's hundreds, and you can just start shooting, you can just start blasting, and they just start dying all over the place. And I don't love that. I think Cameron does a really good job of making you feel scared even when you're clearly beating them back, and the idea that the residual splash of their blood even after you kill them will then burn your skin or your face and stuff. It's always scary and it's always well done, but just personally, I prefer like that one unstoppable killing machine that no one can get, as opposed to a bunch of faceless ones that all go down pretty easy.
Okay, counterpoint
Kind
to
of in the
this.
same boat.
Counterpoint to this. I feel like Alien is like a bee in your car, right? Like, I think that's, you know, you can swipe and swat at it, and you're probably not going to hit it because it's just like the one. And you're also like driving, so the situation's inherently dangerous, which is how a lot of like car accidents end up happening. There's a surprising statistics around that. But I feel like Aliens is like mowing the lawn and hitting a hornet's nest. Like, these are different levels of terror, because at that point, yeah, there's so many that just swatting and hitting the air, you're probably going to hit some and maybe even kill them in the process. That doesn't help the situation at all. The fact that you're able to kill them in it doesn't matter is what's making it more scary.
I wouldn't put them against each other like that. I don't think that they're two levels of fear where one is a much greater risk and one's a much lower one because of the context. I think they're just two very different kinds of conflicts. The xenomorph, for what it is and what it means in Alien, is a terrifying, constant presence and threat in that movie that puts everyone into existential spirals. And the xenomorphs individually in this movie are less important than what the situation they put you in is saying about the characters and then ultimately the queen. So I don't think it's like that, but I think what Alien is doing with the dozens of xenomorphs, it does the best possible thing you can do in this situation by making them cool threats and terrifying, even while you're facing that steep climb of the more you show them and the more you kill them, the more diminishing returns there are going to be when people see that you can just keep killing them. And this is the only Alien sequel, I think, that doesn't suffer dramatically because of that.
Oh yeah.
After this, it becomes a lot worse.
Which is funny, because after this they try to pull it back and just do the one again. And because of the, like, there's a lot of problems with Alien 3, but one of them being that idea of, like, escalation just being, like, undercut and going back to 1, it just doesn't feel as intimidating anymore. In a weird way, because, yeah, 1 just in isolation on the single spaceship is pretty terrifying, but you suddenly get all of them, and then it's like, oh well, now it's even worse, and then you go back to 1, it's like, no, I mean, it's still scary, but you know, we just had like a plan into the things, we'll figure this out.
Yeah, I mean, and to Ian's point, I also think the escalation works because in Alien you're dealing with like space truckers who they're not combatants. They don't like the thing I've always given a pass to with Aliens when it comes to how easily a single xenomorph can be killed. It's that they're packing insane amounts of sci-fi heat, whereas in Alien 1, you know, they're dealing with like makeshift weaponry. And what's cool about that, because it plays into that machismo critique, is that then you get to Aliens and it's like, all right, we've got all the guns in the fucking world, so we got nothing to be afraid of, and it doesn't make a lick of difference. It doesn't fucking matter. And I think that escalation does work. I do, however, think. See, I don't think Alfie dropped out last minute. I think Ian knew this was going to happen and purposefully didn't give me enough time to watch Alien 1 again, so I would not be able to debate him.
Okay, here's my thing. Okay, Alien 1 is a great horror film and just a great film. I just don't particularly like it. It doesn't work for me. Aliens is just balls to the wall fucking awesome. And then everything else after that is terrible.
No. I think there's a lot of good Alien movies after this. I love Prometheus. I love Alien Covenant. I actually like things about Alien Resurrection and Alien 3. Like, I don't think they're terrible. I think the only bad Alien movie is Alien Romulus.
Dude, I remember Ian, were you there for this, or was this when Alfie and I were taking over when we did an episode on Alien Resurrection?
I feel like that was when I first had Leah.
Yeah, that was when you were on fucking paternity leave. And
yeah.
We did Alien Resurrection, and I had never seen that. I actually, I've not seen Alien Covenant, but like Prometheus, and look, I liked Romulus fine. It was fine. But I will say that nothing in this franchise even sniffs Alien and Aliens, except for maybe Alien Isolation, but that's a different thing.
The comparisons between Alien and Aliens are always going to be kind of unavoidable, but they always play to me like Terminator and Terminator 2, where any sane, rational person can prefer one over the other, and you can have a legitimate argument for why Alien is better than Aliens or vice versa, but the second that you commit to one, it's actually a really good litmus test for what your wider taste in fiction is overall, because the people who like Aliens like certain kinds of movies, and the people who like Alien like certain kinds of movies.
Yeah.
That's true.
And the answer to both of those, good movies. Just depends on her.
It's fitting that it's also James Cameron in both examples, because I also prefer Terminator to Terminator 2, but like,
and you're wrong.
Those are also very similar movies.
That's weird. I would definitively say T2 is better, but that's neither here nor there. That's an argument for a different episode.
It's a long thing, and it drives me crazy. I remember the first time I heard about this, I was like, people prefer the first one? Yeah, it's like a big film debate. I'm like, well, they're wrong, and they should stop debating it.
Man.
That's what I want. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm changing my I've got to update my genie wish with my lawyer. I've got to go through it. I'm gonna stop my previous wishes. I'm gonna throw those all out. I'm just gonna be like, make everyone admit Terminator 2 is the superior film. Make everyone admit Aliens is the superior film. And I'll keep the third one for the 13-inch dick attached to me in the right place. That still functions normally. Okay. Anyway, listen, you gotta lawyer out your genie wishes. If you ever come across a genie lamp, don't be an idiot. Don't just start wishing right away. Consult me, your local genie expert. I put a lot of thought into this.
Support
Okay.
your local small businesses.
For years I've wanted to make like a little sketch comedy thing where it's like, I wish I had a 13-inch dick. Okay. My ass. Don't let this happen to you. Contact the Wish consultants. Yeah. Anyway, so back to Aliens. So we talked a lot about the xenomorphs and stuff. We haven't talked a ton about the Queen. I fucking love the look of the alien Queen here, but me being the big CGI head, it is like, because this is 86, it is right at that era where they were like really pushing what the technology could do, and while it looks amazing, you can definitely tell. My big thing with like all the discussion on practical versus digital effects is they each have the thing that the other one just, no matter what, cannot do as well. So like with digital effects, CGI or whatever you're doing, you can just make these creatures move, and it's always like more fluid and more natural, and they're like just generally more capable because it's animation. It's like you have that very hand-tailored experience. But when it's like animatronics or puppet work or what have you, like they can look so much better because they're actually, being shot on the same location, and you can tailor what you're doing to shoot them and have them look their best, and you'll just know right away it's going to look good. But then they just they're clunky with the movement. It's not as like smooth. It always like just has this little bit of suspension of disbelief. And so I definitely found myself running into that a bit here on this watch through of just like the Queen looks so amazing, but then like some of the movements in the fight just seem like really like clunky and stilted, and like, oh man, I don't want them to go back and update it. You know, luckily James Cameron isn't George Lucas, otherwise this would have happened with the special edition. But it is just it's just one of those things, like it stands out in a way that I couldn't help but notice. Most of the other effects are perfect except for the like spaceship dropping in. That one looks I think the worst out of all the effects in the film.
Oh yeah, like when it crashes, or
not that too. Just like anything where the ship is flying, it's just got that like very like cut out kind of look to it and stuff.
clearly like a miniature.
Yeah, a miniature, or like filmed on a blue screen and put it in front of the yada yada. Yeah, it just doesn't look as great. But that's like so nothing in the movie. The wider thing is the xenomorphs themselves, and I think like all the suit work for the xenomorphs in this one looked just amazing. They move so perfectly. And they look perfect on film. They're just so like pristine in that really like creepy looking way that they have. But the Queen's movements did just really stand out to me this time around.
Yeah. I don't know, that's an interesting thing with the xenomorphs generally, because like it's an interesting comparison to like something like Resurrection, where a lot of the Xenos are CG, and when you have that, their movement does feel more smooth and animal-like. Whereas even in some shots in this, not even just the Queen, but the regular xenomorphs moving around and crawling through vents, I'm like, there's a part of me that feels very aware that this is a dude in a suit crawling around on all fours, because it just doesn't look, it almost doesn't look natural, but there's a texture to it, and there's something about that sort of herky jerk movement that makes it feel unsettling. With the Queen, I thought they did a decent enough job of cutting back and forth between what was practical and what was CG, similar to like the T-Rex in the rain, where my eye was certainly tricked well enough for the most part. And I'm so enamored by Ripley walking out in a mech suit and telling her to get the fuck away, bitch.
Get away from her, you bitch!
Yeah, I'm just kind of here for it. So I actually didn't notice it quite as much there, but yeah, I do love the design of the Queen. When she like gets into the hive and there's the whatever you want to call
sack.
it, the sort of the egg sack that's like moving across the ceiling. That shit's so good. Very creepy. Yeah. It's an interesting contrast of two ideas of motherhood, where you have the idea of Ripley's version of motherhood, which is not a biological thing, it's this relationship that she's developing with Newt, and then you have the xenomorph Queen, whose concept of motherhood is purely a biological, like, breeding
instinctive
necessity.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But yet at the same time, both of them are like fiercely protective, and kind of, you know, get away from my eggs, get away from Newt, you bitch. And so it's an interesting way to kind of compare and contrast these two like perspectives on motherhood, and I don't know. I liked a lot of that. I feel like maybe I haven't seen Aliens in such a long time that when I'm watching it and picking up on all this stuff, I'm just like, oh yeah, that's neat. I forgot that's a thing. That's cool.
It's a good movie.
It's a pretty good movie. Hot take.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
I'm with Matt on the way the Queen looked, because I didn't really notice it as I was watching. I thought it looked good for what it was trying to do, and I was so enamored with the actual context of what was happening that it didn't bother me. Like the illusion worked as far as I was concerned. I also really enjoy movies around this period of time, from like the 80s and 90s, when we had this peak of trying to revive silent era staging and color work to make these more sci-fi gothic stories feel just a little bit more surreal. Like Tim Burton makes his bread and butter on this kind of stuff, but like Bram Stoker's Dracula does the same thing, and then Aliens does, but then Terminator 2 has a lot of practical effects that are in a similar vein where everyone's just using a lot of makeup, a lot of double exposure, a lot of models, a lot of matte paintings, things that kind of lend itself to like a heightened reality, but
Getting like three sets of twins in one movie.
Yeah, exactly like that. Like that kind of stuff always really works for me because you can, it's not that it feels fake, it's that you can feel people's hands on it, and that's part of the fun for me, especially as digital and CGI become more prevalent. In a lot of ways, they can look so perfect that they're uncanny, that they kind of disrupt from the reality of the film. And whether you're using practical effects or CGI effects, at the end of the day, you have to understand what the effects are in service to. And if you're going to do something digitally, you have to construct and shoot your scene in a way that's welcoming to that. Same with practical effects. I mean, this is why the CGI in Dune looks so good and why the CGI in a lot of other blockbuster movies don't, because the people doing the CGI work and the people doing the photography are two separate units that aren't always talking to each other. Most of the time, the cinematographer doesn't even stay on post-production to see how the CGI scenes are being lit, which is why there's this dissonance. But in this, I think it really works, and Cameron has always kind of been on the front end of a lot of this stuff. And here, like you said, we are kind of like we're up against this point where Cameron would try and do as much of this in advance as possible to make it look as good as possible, but he's running up against the limits of what's physically possible and what's digitally possible. And that's why there's so much time between so many of his movies, because he's always trying to make it as perfect as possible. It's always pushing the CGI technology as much as he can and all that. But I thought it looked really, really good. My only complaint about the Queen isn't even really about the Queen. It's just about the way that final scene or that final confrontation happens. Alien ends with Ripley on an escape ship getting ready to go into hibernation, and then a xenomorph is in there and she fights it and she sends it down the airlock. Aliens ends with everybody on a ship getting ready to go off into stasis, but then there's actually a xenomorph on the ship and then Ripley kicks it out of the airlock. I'm not saying that the scene where she's like, "Get away from her, you bitch," where she's got the cool mech suit on and everything isn't awesome. I was just kind of taken out for a second of like, oh yeah, this is the exact same thing that happened at the end of Alien.
Yeah, it sure is. And look at how much better it was done. Did Alien have a mech suit? No. Worst movie.
But for a movie that is like so categorically different from Alien, that in so many ways, to have an ending that's basically beat for beat identical is kind of weird to me.
Yeah, no, I feel you. It was weird because I don't even remember it. Like, I feel like surprised every time. Because, she's got the power loader and she's got the thing, like, in a grip where she's got both of the things on the head. And for some reason, every time I watch the movie, I just think, okay, now's the part where she just pops it like a fucking grape. Oh, wait, no. That's not what happens. Because, like, you wouldn't want to do that because then you get acid everywhere, but fuck it would be cool.
It would be cool.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're completely right. It is a bit odd that it just ends exactly the same. I would say it's probably one of those things where it's trying to be more in tribute or trying to, like, continue the legacy of it. The only thing that can really kill these is just, space
out of an
itself. Yeah. Like, that's the only way to truly defeat it is, like, space itself, the vacuum, the abyss. But I don't know. It is a bit weird to have it, like, beat for beat like that. You're not wrong. Though the thing that isn't beat for beat, and we can go on to this in a second if you had something else you want to say, but the thing that isn't beat for beat is the role of the android in this movie, and I think that's interesting and worthwhile to talk about. But if you had something else first, that's fine.
Oh, no, you're good. I really like Bishop in this. I think he's great. I love his opening scene when he's doing the knife trick. and then they reveal that he actually missed slightly and cut himself a bit. That he's kind of in this group of Space Marines where he is trying to stay afloat with them, putting on the same sort of like masculine airs. But as the movie goes on, you start to see that like a lot of it is just performative, that he's just doing a service, and at the end of the day he actually really cares about these people's well-being. And it is kind of there in the scene where he's got his hands over what's his face's palm, and he's doing the trick to show off, but if anyone was going to get hurt in that situation, it had to be him and not the other guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I love Bishop a lot. You get that sort of setup because of your expectations coming off of Alien with the android whose name escapes me at the moment.
Church? No, that's the cat.
Rook? Is it Rook in the original?
Sure, the A2 model. They were always a bit twitchy. But yeah, Bishop in this, I love the setup and the subversion of that. And it works too because the audience is very much on Ripley's side that whole time, and so the audience is kind of building trust with Bishop in the same way that Ripley is. And I know I was always kind of like, all right, when's the other shoe gonna drop? But thankfully it all mostly comes back to Burke, and we get to see that Bishop gets to grow beyond that. And I love Bishop. He's great. And I know he and Hicks were gonna be more central characters in like every other version of the Alien 3 screenplay that was made. So it's a shame that I literally have a novelization of William Gibson's screenplay of Alien 3. I might go read it. I might go read it after this because Bishop and Hicks are kind of the main characters of that, which is great because I ship them and they're adorable. And Bishop is
they are adorable. They are adorable.
They're very adorable.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I remember seeing someone talk about Alien 3 and being like, yeah, maybe the idea of a horror movie opening up with something that alienates the audience by killing these characters that we cared about, maybe that's a good thing since it's a horror movie. I'm like, no. It was still a poor decision. Like, you're just never going to convince me with words that like, just ultimate disappointment of our expectations. I'm not saying that all of them had to survive the process of Alien 3, but just like, off-screen killing them in the beginning of the movie was not the move, and I don't think you'll ever convince me that it was.
Oh no, I mean, I just think it's wild that you had a screenplay written by the fucking guy who wrote Neuromancer, and you were just like, no thank you. Like, what the fuck are we doing here? But anyways, but no, I love Bishop in this. I think Bishop and Hicks, it's cool the way that we get this big cast introduction, and you kind of slowly, like, characters you're not even thinking super hard about, like Hicks and Bishop, kind of slowly but surely make themselves more of a presence throughout the story as they become the only ones that we, the audience, as well as Ripley, begin to trust. No, I love it. It works really well. And I wasn't even thinking about that. The cutting of himself almost as a metaphor for him not being that like perfect to the company android, because he almost makes a mistake in the fact that he is more on Ripley's side in this whole thing. It's just cool.
Yeah, it gives him this level of humanity that's really nice. And by the way, Rook is the synthetic in Romulus, but the original is shit. I just had the name. It doesn't matter. Ash. It's Ash. But either way, yeah, I really like Bishop in this. I really like Ripley's immediate gut reaction to him just being kind of terrified because of what happened in the original movie, because you really can't blame her for that at all. But then, like, throughout, you're not spending really any time with these two, like, bickering or arguing or her, like, actively being hostile to him. Everyone's always in service to this larger mission, and in trying to do what's best for the people to stay alive, these two end up becoming more comrades, as opposed to anything that just gets laid out in, like, an expository dialogue sequence or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just think it's really good, like, subversive writing to do that. To, set him up as, oh, it's an android. The first time she talks to him, she'd just, like, stay the fuck away from me kind of thing. And then to have him be the, not only, like, super loyal, but actually the most useful companion along for the ride. More so than Hicks. Hicks doesn't like ultimately do a lot in this movie. Like he's trying his best.
Moral
but,
support.
like, yeah, he's trying his best. Like I mean, he saves Ripley. That's from the facehugger. That's about like his biggest role. He gives her the watch and stuff, but like a lot of his skills just aren't very practical or useful in any of the immediate moments. Whereas Bishop crawls through the fucking sewer grate and pilots the aircraft down and gets everybody out by the end. So I just think that's really cool that he ends up being the most useful one and not a bad guy, and then he dies at the end, maybe, kind of, sort of. He gets ripped apart at the end. I don't know I don't remember the justification for why he's not in Alien 3. I'm sure it's not good.
I will say I love the character you had mentioned before, the like lieutenant who can't really. I love his kind of arc where he sort of comes around to start being like, okay, I need to actually take this seriously, and the way he gets that ending with is it Vasquez? Is that who he? I loved that moment at the end when they use the grenade. And I also love Burke. Like I was surprised by how much I was enjoying Burke's presence throughout this whole movie. One thing I really picked up on is how condescending Burke is in the beginning of the film. Even while he's like going out of his way to like be kind and like try to win Ripley over, he's still like calling her kiddo, and he's just being such a condescending little asshole the entire time. Even when he's trying to be nice and when he's trying to like get you on his side, he's still being that way. And that's something
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, even when I watch the cut stuff, like the Amanda scene, when he comes to talk to Ripley and she's just like, any news about my daughter? And he's just like, well, don't worry about that right now, but here's all this important stuff. And she's just like, what about my daughter? And he's just like, all right, fine. And I love that. He's great.
He's always talking like he's doing you a favor by giving you information, even when it's situations that are like life and death. He's such a lovable dick. I love him.
Yep. Yeah,
my favorite part with him was did I screw up? Were mistakes made? Yes, and I feel terrible about them.
I made a bad call.
It's just the most like fucking seedy, shitty businessman. I remember Rasco was a huge fan of the Alien films. I remember talking to him forever and ever, and it was when I was like going through a big Star Trek phase. I'm like, yeah, Star Trek's like the perfect utopian socialist future, and he's like, yeah, and Alien's like the ultimate capitalist future. I'm like, yeah, pretty fucking much.
Yeah. Wayland Yutani is just the whole world government.
Well, that's why I thought it was so cool that. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I will give Alien Resurrection very, very little in this world, but having it go fucking 6,000 or whatever years in the future and say, oh, Wayland Yutani, yeah, they got bought out by Walmart, was probably the funniest thing anyone's ever done in filmmaking history.
I'm also an apologist for both Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection. I like things about both of those movies.
I have a good time with Resurrection. I will say it's cool that they thought to get a pass at an Alien 3 script from William Gibson, because he's largely credited with sort of coining cyberpunk as a genre. And the first Alien feels very influential on that genre. The way it is so heavy with its satire of corporations and this idea that in a hyper-capitalist science fiction future, we have a world where humanity is kind of at the will of the machinations of big businesses, and the search for potential profit and potential use cases for these horrific aliens is more important than just like the lives of people. And I know William Gibson found himself very influenced by that when he was working on Neuromancer. So I think it's cool that they kind of bring that around, because that's something that I have debated with people about before. I'm like, is Alien and Aliens, are they cyberpunk? And like, no, but I love the consistent critique of the like capitalist system, because it always goes back to profit motive and business are like the biggest villains in Alien. And I always love when we lean into that in this franchise.
Yeah,
One thing Go ahead, Steve. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Alien Earth just wrapped up recently, and I didn't love Alien Earth by the end, but it's supposed to be an in-between where it takes place between Alien and Aliens and kind of bridges some of the information gaps there. And it deals a lot with the synthetics, and it's a lot more inspired by Blade Runner than it is by Alien. But in that series, you learn that Earth is ruled by 5 big corporations that have taken over for all governments. And Weyland-Yutani was trying to get the aliens to be studied on Earth, but they crash land on some other corporation's property. And so they have these like UN-style meetings that are essentially just big business CEOs arguing about how much they should pay for the damage caused versus how much the property is worth if they just keep the stuff that they stole. And in the midst of that, one of the primary characters is a billionaire tech CEO who's a child, and his name is Boyd Cavalier because he is a boy and he's really, really cavalier. And he's created all these synthetics and given them Peter Pan names because it's just this big fantasy of kids that never grow up. And that starts to be the undercurrent of like the capitalist critique and all the alien stuff in that series, where it is essentially just like all of these people deciding that they can just keep doing things to make money without any thought to the consequence of that, because the longer you live, the more stuff that you can buy, and the more stuff that you can buy, the more infantilized and fun you can have. But at the end of the day, this all does come with a cost, which is, number one, your humanity, but then after a while, it might also just be your life because you're dealing with things that you don't understand.
Yeah. The thing I was going to say is I just want something alien to like, I think the ultimate gut punch you could do for the alien thing is just have the whole situation, just all the terrible things that happen to the people along the way to get a xenomorph into the hands of the company on Earth. And instead of doing like the resurrection thing of, and now the whole world's been destroyed by these monsters. Instead of that, it's just they get it and they experiment on it and they run all these tests and then they just ultimately decide that it's not actually profitable.
Yeah.
And they're just gonna toss it off to, like, this was just a wasted endeavor. I think would be, because like you look at it, it's like, yeah, I mean they got acid for blood, but they're also like just that's kind of all they got going for them. That's going to be useful to you. Like you can't just throw them somewhere and expect them to clean house, because then you're going to have to come in and kill them, and it's just not a profitable enterprise to deal with. Like, just having that be the realization.
And that's a thing that Alien Earth kind of deals with a little bit, because really at the end of the day, the problem with capitalism, the problem with technology today, the thing that Alien kind of gets tries to do is, it doesn't matter if it makes any logical sense for it to be profitable. If we have it, we will find a way to charge for it, whether or not it's a good idea. And just by assuming that you can pay for something, whether or not it's useful, becomes so normalized that people just start to accept it until things get perpetually worse and worse and worse.
Maybe. I could see that. I don't know. I'm just got that like fucking Richard Bachman Roadwork ending in my head, where it's just, and all in all, the only reason they were building the highway extension was because they needed to use up the year's budget, or they wouldn't get more money back next year. It wasn't for any other reason than that. And it's just like that gut punch of all of this just to realize, actually this doesn't work out. Whoops. Oh. All right. Where else is there to go with Aliens?
I want to talk about the sound design a little bit because it's really,
Sure.
really good. Cameron does such a good job of using the actual sounds of the technology and the world to become parts of the score in a way that start to build suspense. The really early example that's really good is when the xenomorphs start cutting the power to the facility they're in, and then Vasquez and the other guy are underwater. And they've got the little scanner and they're looking for him. And every time you're in that scene, you just keep hearing the water drip, 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 drip all the way through until eventually you realize that the xenomorphs are on their way in and they have to bolt the door. And then when they grab Newt and she's got her the watch that tells them where they are and they're running after her, as they're running after her, you're hearing the beep go over. You're hearing the beep happen constantly, and we're so conditioned in sci-fi action movies to hear that specific kind of sound and think something like a ticking time bomb or a bomb about to go off. So even though it's like a race to save her life, it's got this like building, this escalating sense of dread because you feel like the more beeps go by, the sooner you're going to get to some sort of big explosion. And the big explosion is the xenomorphs got her. It's so good.
Boy. Yeah, I love the sound design of the Marines equipment. That like pulse rifle sound is like super iconic. And it's,
I love that the pulse rifles are just like a Steadicam rig. That's so funny to just use in that manner. The sound design is fantastic. Again, the way the xenomorphs themselves sound, like the growls and the clicks and stuff, and just the
so good.
when it gets a little lost, I feel, outside of the first two films, of just how like pissed off the things look when they go in for the kill. Maybe it's just a matter of they start just killing people indiscriminately, which wasn't like a thing before. You know, in this one and Alien, it was no, they don't kill you, and then they just started fucking killing you. In the other films, so it's just like when the shot pans in and they just have like that trembling mouth and lip action, and then it's just paired with that really like gross gurgly sound from all the saliva plus like the growl from the creature. There's just a lot going on all at once. It's really, really fucking creepy.
The xenomorphs really are like top 5 greatest movie villain designs of all time.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. It's kind of crazy that, like, because, like, Predator is also on that list, so it's great that they got to fight each other, like, multiple times.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, no,
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say the design of them is cool. Go ahead. Interrupt me. Say what you want to say. God.
I was just going to say, I like that throughout the franchise, the xenomorph faces, they've kind of evolved with the times, because in this they always look like really pissed off and really disgusting, and the early films, because they're a hybrid of like CGI, early CGI, and more in-camera puppet work, they're grosser, they're more tactile. But as they go on, we start to do like really different stuff with how they attack and fight you. In Alien Earth, every time there's a close-up of a xenomorph about to kill you, it looks like it's trying to smile. And it's the most unsettling thing imaginable when you've just got a xenomorph right behind you, and it's smiling with its double-mouth tongue thing right before it eats your face off. And then in Alien Covenant, every version of the xenomorph in that movie is just absolutely ferocious and is tearing you limb from limb. And then there's that one scene where like the baby xenomorph that just looks like it's like naked skin, it's just kind of standing there ominously, and David's kind of in awe of it. And when he kills it and it's falling down in agony and David screams, in that movie, the only bit of sympathetic music that exists for a character dying, we're in a movie where everyone is being mauled apart, is that scene when David sees his baby just die on the ground. That's the one moment where Ridley Scott is like, I feel bad for this creature that God created.
The problem is it wasn't God. It was those weird bald guys.
Who are also God.
Oh, the
Anyway, sorry,
engineers.
continue, Matt.
It's xenomorphs are cool.
Yeah.
They're cool.
That's
They're
it.
so cool.
Yeah, they're just cool. I'm a big fan of them. I really wish I had. I talked. Okay, well, I talked a little bit about this earlier. One thing I like about Aliens is the way it expands on just the general aesthetic and visual design of this universe. Because with the first Alien, you already have this like 70s vision of the future, and with Aliens, we're now moving, like you said, nearly a decade on in our real life technology. We get to reflect a little bit of that in that this movie takes place 60 years later. But just the expansion of like what this world looks like, the little touches to fashion, and the little touches to what the just general vibe and aesthetic of not only ships but the Marines, and how that differs from what we saw with kind of the space truckers in the first movie. It creates a world that feels like, when it comes to science fiction worlds, I feel like the first two Alien films create something that feels almost as compelling and limitless as something like Star Wars. When you watch Aliens, it suddenly becomes so clear why this universe feels so ripe for storytelling, why there's a tabletop RPG set in this universe, because the way that the set design and visual language of the film is able to convey this much wider world. I found myself really engrossed in this viewing, in a way that I haven't in previous viewings, where I was just like, man, I just kind of want to live here a little. Not actually. I don't actually want to live in the world of Aliens. That sounds miserable.
Yeah.
But I want to live in this space, in this fictional setting, because I think it's just so tactile and interesting, and I like all the knobs and doodads. Is basically what
I'm glad that you mentioned Star Wars there, because Alien, in part, it exists because after Ridley Scott made his first movie, The Duel, or The Duelist, whatever it's called.
Love that one.
Huh?
I love that one.
Yeah. Yeah, so after he made that, Star Wars had just come out, and the studios wanted him to do a big sci-fi movie. They wanted him to do a Star Wars movie, essentially. And he's like, no, I don't want to do a Star Wars movie. If I do a space movie, it's got to be Texas Chainsaw Massacre in space. And if you think about what Texas Chainsaw Massacre is about and what Alien's about, they are actually very similar movies. But by 1986, Star Wars is like so dominant in culture that I'm honestly kind of shocked that Alien doesn't feel more like Star Wars in that aesthetic level. Like, you would think the easy money on making an Alien sequel in the mid 80s is make it more like Star Wars, but they don't do that. They go their own way. H.R. Geiger doesn't come back to do the design work for this one because he was working on another movie at the time. But the people that they bring in to kind of expand his scope and do what worked about the first movie, but just flesh it out more, because you get the queen and you get the eggs and you get to see more of the spaceships and the guns and stuff. I love how all of that still looks and how it still feels consistent with the first one, and not like a massive cultural shift had happened between the two movies, even though it did. Also, side note, I love that the guns have recoil, and I love the notion that you have to fire in steady, controlled bursts like a real gun, because when's the last time you've seen an action movie where someone compensates for recoil?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I love the it would be so tempting to just create a universe where it's like, all right, it's super far in the future, we have all these like hyper advanced weapons, and in a sense we do, because they have these like super exploding tip rounds and stuff like that. But at the same time, it keeps it very grounded. Like, I can imagine in the future guns looking like this, feeling like this. It never loses, because I think that's the biggest thing it did pull from, the first Alien movie. I think that's the biggest thing it did pull from the original Star Wars, is we want a future that feels kind of lived in and grounded. And I think we don't lose that. That's that most important part, where it's like, everything has a texture to it that feels familiar, but it's sort of heightened, so at the same time it feels futuristic. And I think the pulse rifles are weirdly like the best example of that. There's something about them that feels so like futuristic, mass produced. There's a smoothness to them, yet at the same time the sound of manipulating one, the recoil of them, the heft of them, it feels futuristic while still feeling so grounded that this future always feels like very possible.
If you just took the digital counter of rounds off the side, it would just look like a real gun. It's so subtle, but it works so well.
Yeah, exactly.
The digital counter of rounds is a really funny idea to me, because
it's very video gamey.
It removes the concept of like the Mexican standoff. Dirty Harry could not pull off his famous thing if he had that gun. It would ruin the whole bluff.
It's fucking like the beginning of Dark Knight, where it's like, he's out, right? No. No, he is not.
Who taught you how to count?
That shit is so funny.
So
I love that movie.
Yeah.
Next week for Horror Month, The Dark Knight. It's about mothers and sons, right?
Maybe. Mothers and daughters. Mothers and daughters.
Mothers and daughters. Yeah. It's totally about mothers and daughters.
Yeah, totally. The technology thing, funny enough, Haley and I were watching Aliens together for this, and the technology thing that she felt the need to comment on, and we had a little bit of a conversation about, was the little desk phone video call device that you see them use just like once or twice in the very beginning of the movie. We're just watching them like have that call after Ripley's second nightmare, and it's like clearly both of them just got up for this one call and stuff, and they're just talking in the video monitor, and Haley just looks over at me and goes, "The future." I'm like, I don't know, because like I remember they tried that for a while to be a thing in like the mid to late 2000s. I remember seeing like the home phone that like had the video screen in it, so you could do a video call at your home phone, because it was like right before the iPhone, so like the technology was there, but it not everyone really thought it would go like the full Star Trek way of just having the computer in your pocket that does everything. There was still like some debate about maybe it'll be different devices for different situations. So just the little desktop video phone was just like kind of a neat little relic to see. That's something I don't think we do enough anymore. We just kind of like, everyone has a cell phone now, so anytime we see future technology communication, it's more or less like based off of that, of the like the device you just will always have on you. We don't really see people like experimenting and imagining things that are based on more outdated technologies or whatever anymore. It's kind of interesting.
To go off that like whole lived-in world point, I think part of what makes stuff like that in movies like Alien and Aliens and Blade Runner so ubiquitous is there is something that just feels kind of like, especially now, limiting and kind of socially oppressive, where you only have access to certain parts of your life or communication in specific designated blocks, that there's no sort of like level of autonomy around those things. In Alien, when they always go downstairs in the ship and they've got the computer that they call Mother, and you're kind of secluded off in this like almost echo chamber before you can do anything, and that thing basically just gives you the commands for your life and death. Or in this, where everyone's kind of hauled off on the command station on one end of it, while the Space Marines are off getting demolished by the aliens, and Ripley literally has to take the tank out, bust through it, and get everyone back. Like, the idea that the technology is spaced out, that you have to call for help from one area, or that the fact that the Marines could go missing for 17 days before anyone would bother to show up, that kind of like inability to access like instant information or instant reinforcements because you have no autonomy over those things is really cool.
Yeah.
I also think it when you talk about I don't know why I keep circling back to this, but when you talk about cyberpunk as a genre, one of the things that describes it, it's like one of my favorite phrases I think about it all the time, is that it's high tech, low life. And I think about that a lot when I'm watching Alien, where it's like we have the technology to traverse the stars, we have the ability to cryogenically freeze people so we can terraform these planets, we have the ability to manufacture these giant world-altering machines, and yet we spare no thought about the human cost of any of these things. Like it's not even on the list of priorities. And I think that rings through a lot in this movie, because even beyond the commentary on motherhood and beyond all that, you also have this commentary on like the value of human life in the face of technological and this sort of advancement and the things they hope to gain from like the xenomorph. And so again, it brings me back to the idea of high-tech, low life, of just the pursuit of progress and the pursuit of all of this at the expense of like what it does to our humanity. And I like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't like that. That's terrible. But I like that it's being explored.
Yeah. I mean, like in both movies, right? Like Weyland Yutani's whole thing is like the crew can die. We just need the alien. That's the important part.
Yep. Yeah. One of the more subtle like advancements in technology you see between Alien and Aliens occurs to me is the rate of space travel like it isn't outright stated, but it seems inherently faster because like one of the big points of conflict at first in Alien is the fact that the ship has taken them, like, has slowed them down so they can go explore this planet that's been signaled and yada yada. And all of them are mad about it because it's going to be like, it's going to add like 2 years to their journey or something, or months and months to their journey. Whereas they get out there to LV-426 or whatever it is relatively quickly. Like, obviously a bunch of shit goes down, and Newt's surviving on her own, but she's not surviving on her own for years. You get the sense that it's like a couple weeks, and like with the 17 days thing, you get the sense that maybe it'll take like about 2 to 3 weeks to get anyone to come save them. So like the rate of space travel has increased like profoundly, which is pretty interesting.
Well, and it's increased profoundly, and the reason that the xenomorphs get disturbed at all is because there is a colonizing mission happening on the planet where the xenomorphs crashed. And the idea that, like, in between these two movies, not only has space travel increased, not only has Weyland Yutani expanded more, but the idea that eventually, regardless of what warnings or danger signs you had, you're going to go out further into space, try to take over more planets, and then the universe is going to push back in the form of these xenomorphs.
Yeah. Fucking space monsters.
Space monsters. My God.
Yeah. You know, you hate to see it.
I love the irony of the Weyland Yutani, the building better worlds. I love that. That's so good. That's like just, it's so perfect. It's so on the nose. But you know, it's okay. I know writers who use subtext, and they're all cowards.
Alrighty. Is there anything else we want to talk about, or do we want to go ahead and go on to ratings?
No, I'm good.
Same.
All right. Well, I'll go first then. I'll give Aliens a 5 out of 5. Game over, mans. Game over. I had a teacher in high school who did PowerPoints to teach the class, and like he got in trouble because he was taking up just gigs and gigs of the school's hard drive space, because all his PowerPoints had like sound effects and like video clips in them, and it was just taking up so much of his room, so much digital storage space, and just one of them that he used constantly, it was just game over, man, game over, every time like a battle that we were talking about went wrong. Just
Nice. Nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'll give Alien or Aliens. Sorry, I will give the version I watched 4 out of 5. Casey's floating heads after Newt gets taken and her doll's head is floating. Or went out for Casey. I love that scene where she's like, Casey doesn't dream because she's made of plastic.
That's so funny.
That's so good.
She's such a good child actress. I loved her.
Oh, she's really good. She's really good. The extended cut that includes specifically the scene with Hicks where they call each other by their first names, that gets like a 4.5 probably. But I didn't actually get to watch that version. And it doesn't get a 5 because it's not Alien 1.
I concur with Matt. It does not get a 5 because it's not Alien 1, but I will give it a 4.5 out of 5. Alien queens detaching from their egg sacs.
Oh, that hurt.
It does
me.
look painful.
That was physical.
It really does.
Just the way the nests look and like the resiny feel. It's like beehives where they just secrete that shit. They just eat paper and then secrete that. Is just so fucking creepy.
This is nasty. I love it.
Yeah. Bees created paper mache. You're welcome for that thought. All right. So that will do it for this week's episode. Steve, did you have a pick for what was gonna be what we're gonna continue with next week?
Let me think on it, and I can message you guys.
Okay. No worries then. All right. Until then, everyone, thank you so much for watching. I'm Sick Pot 2.
I'm that Matt Kid, the Xenomorph. Hello. Goodbye.
The Xenomorph erotica lover.
I'm the Xenomorph erotica. Well, to me it's just normal erotica.
Really just need to do a whole episode with that bit.
Oh, God.
And I am telling you to get away from her, you bitch.
And we are your cool gentlemen. And we will be dissecting things.
Ha 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 ha!